Absolutely what?
Get out of that.
Stuck.
Sorry.
Hang on, I got.
So who was
He's involved with the is that working?
PMAC, right?
Huh?
Did she do PMAC?
She does, I don't know, she does a lot with the land trust, or has done a lot. Live stream. And I think she has been on. You need to turn off your sound.
I know, I did that. I won't.
Of course, I did.
she could.
Muted.
She like knows stuff.
I have no idea.
Don't really care
I don't know.
We're not recording yet, are we?
Yes, we're live. Well,
I'll just leave.
But we are live, okay.
Sorry, this button won't work.
and now.
I probably hit it too hard. Another meeting.
Now we're live.
Okay.
You all set, April? I mean, Autumn. Two
I'm not-
A's next to me.
I'm not leading the meeting.
Okay.
The other days. I'll join, yeah.
No, I just wanted to make sure your computer was.
Oh, yeah, I'll join in just a second and then make sure the video is not that.
Good. I see we have Lydia out there in
Sorry, I was trying to pull up.
the virtual world.
Sorry. Join.
Morning.
So we do have a quorum, so we can call the meeting to order.
Is your sound off?
Shouldn't affect, I'm not even on my.
You're not
mic.
on it? Okay. I still heard it then. I still heard feedback, sorry.
Oh.
And I'm not even, never mind.
Is mine on?
I will turn mine off, just
Technology.
there, I'm off. Okay. So with that, we'll commence the meeting, and Jamie is absent, so Angela, you're representing the Sustainability Department today. Excellent. We have the minutes that Jamie sent around from our last meeting, looking to codify those and
Would
get
you
them.
mind actually doing the roll call so I know
Oh,
everybody
sure.
here? Sorry. If I can pull up the agenda also, if that's, do you have that in front of you?
I do. I have the agenda in front of me. So you want a formal roll call?
Well, just so I make sure I understand who's here.
Well, go ahead. Everybody say your name. It's
You
here.
have to go around.
David Kirsty. Ron Allen.
Deb McDonough.
Anson Boder.
Patrice Castenholz.
Rick Meinking.
April Seider.
And we have Lydia, I think.
Lydia Job.
Virtual Land. I don't see the screen.
Yes.
Lydia Job here.
All right, thank you.
All right.
And one small child. Hi, small child.
Yeah.
There might be little visitors.
Can't hear you, Lydia. We see your.
We have it blocked from this side. She's muted.
Looking desperately for the new phone.
She turned it on and turned it back off again, so.
Recording in progress.
Should be okay.
Gonna ring in.
On there. She's not muted.
She's a panel.
Oh,
Now we hear.
Oh, we hear a
but
child now.
I hear her coming out of Autumn's
My
computer.
Wait to see.
Wait.
You can sort of hear me.
Oh, no.
Got you now.
I'll just have to leave.
Yep, we got you.
Won't work.
Okay. Great.
All right, so we've got a full team today. So let's go back to them.
Sorry. Yeah.
You all set?
Yeah, sorry about that.
No, no problem. Let's go back to the meeting, minutes from last month. Can I get a motion to, okay. So moved. A second,
You got.
Patricia. All in, any discussion? Seeing none, do you need a roll call or just a hand? Yeah, all in favor?
I did miss who motioned it though. I heard the second.
I do.
Okay, sorry.
And the agenda was sent to everyone, and I just lost it because I didn't battery up. Any changes? Anybody have any particular agenda item they wanted to bring?
I do.
Okay.
I
you
just
have the
need to
floor.
hear if anybody has ideas for our team costume at trivia.
That's a very important matter
I'm gonna
that
take
needs to
really
be
good
taken. And I think we can bring that into the first part of the meeting and get
Excellent, dude.
rise to the top of the agenda, Deb.
Excellent. I
So
just need to
anybody
think
have a
of ideas.
moving name? They wear a
Name.
costume.
We're
What's
okay.
your name?
Sustainability.
Then they just do the bumblebees again.
Well, bumblebees are kind of the like staff theme, and we need something sustainable about our costume.
All right, bees, flower blossoms with pollen in them, you know.
We could do something about flowers.
Flowers.
I like flowers. I mean,
Could
just sort of
be a pollinator
historically-
garden.
Oh,
Made out of recycled material.
We did hang recyclables off
Off from,
ourselves.
I figured that had probably been
We did
exercise.
have bee
Maybe this should have
wings.
been the last thing on the agenda.
We did have bee wings that my daughter had helped me like put solar panel patterning all over. For some reason, there's crowns, 3 crowns in my basement. I forget what those
We
were.
used those a couple of years.
We've used those a number of times.
That
We
was
might have-
with Sandy.
Well, we don't have a local Burger King anymore to go grab some more for the rest.
No, well, we just need 3 for the
Do
team.
you
We're
do
okay.
you still have them?
I have the crowns.
Then let's bring the
Bring the
crowns.
crowns. Okay,
Let's make it easy.
There you
I
go.
can't,
okay.
Well,
And shall we attach anything like, well, I'll have to touch some
I don't know, I
flowers.
don't have the crown. How much free time do you have?
Not a ton,
You
but-
know, Then let's just bring the crown. and go on with that.
All right. And if anybody has money for Project Grace, they can throw it in the envelope before they leave. Thanks.
The crowns work well.
The crowns work well. Yeah, they make us feel. Maybe it could be
Regal.
sustainability rather than sustainability. It's too late.
Nobility, oh, I like that. Oh, that's good, Deb, right off the top, man. I tell you, the late night show, those writers can go back on strike because you can do all the writing for the late night talk shows.
I am.
All right, now that we've got that agenda item covered, we've got a couple of old business that we really would like to advance forward. The first one being the CPACE ordinance that we met last month about and heard all about it. And at this point, did Jamie have anything she wanted?
So it did go to the ordinance committee on October 12th. There was a presentation. And I know April and Autumn were both there. I think I scooted out right after my item. So I don't know if you guys, I think we were gonna talk through maybe some of the feedback that we got on this item through the ordinance committee. I don't know if either of you want to jump in.
Yeah, we didn't get direct order from the ordinance committee to move this forward. The chair of the ordinance committee, Nick McGee, had some additional questions and the concerns about how it was set up and the framework for it. And really, I think it was more about the order for lien holders and how it came up in front of some other things. So there's some questions about that. So at this point, we're on a holding pattern. And then I don't believe ordinance committee is meeting in November and December. So we'll take this up again, and in April can probably speak to this much better. The council reorganizes after the
After the
election, and then
election.
at the end of the year, and we hopefully will keep some people on ordinance committee, and then we'll get some news. So I think
Is it
Jamie's
anything
intent
from
was-
us or?
no, I think at this point, it's just, we need to go back probably in January and have another.
And the lien holder order was sort of a standard. part of the
It
program.
was.
It, Autumn has it, exactly right. I think part of the problem was, and not problem, ordinance met and Jean Marie wasn't able to be there. So it was just me and Nick. I had already seen the presentation, and so I had already had a preview and time to listen to your great questions and digest his presentation. And Nick had not seen the presentation, the slides and stuff weren't in the packet ahead of time. And so we listened to the whole presentation and Nick was like, I need time to think about this.
Okay.
And so since we only had 2 committee
Yeah.
members and Nick requested time, then unfortunately, because
That's a
the
3-month
wheels of
delay.
government are always turning slowly, we will reorganize. We may meet in December. It depends on who the ordinance chair is and how quickly they want to get a meeting together. If we have some consistency on ordinance, there's no reason why we couldn't meet in December. It'll just be whether or not committees are formed and ready to go. But we definitely will not be meeting in November. So there will be some kind of gap. And so, as Autumn said, this will have to come back before ordinance probably for a second
So
round
that
of
is the next step,
conversation.
I guess.
Yeah. Yeah.
That is going back to ordinance.
So there's no action item from this committee that you need to,
I don't think at this point, no.
okay,
I think it's still in a positive place and.
Yeah.
We have the model ordinance, so when we get the,
do you know the kind of the direction would the ordinance committee be inclined to have the town run this or
Oh.
have
no.
efficiency
I
main?
don't think so. I think if we would just do standard
Standard.
status quo,
Yeah.
have efficiency main run it.
Okay, yeah, good.
That's what I would think.
Not that it has any relevance. But, good. All right, so seeing that there's no action needed or no further discussions on the CPACE, let's move to the sustainability reserve account. And there was documents. that-
Yep, so Jamie provided a draft memo for the group to discuss and get some feedback so we can finalize. The memo would go to the finance committee. And talking about how we could structure that sustainability fund that we've been talking about for many, many years, since really that plan was developed initially. So we're just trying to figure out how to structure that and kind of really putting some kind of meat on the bones, to have something to be able to react to, I think, and starting with finance committee. And I know the finance committee has specifically requested really looking at talking through and doing some workshop kind of things with a lot of these ideas, so that they're prepared and it doesn't all come in at budget time too. So I think laying this groundwork is important. And so I assume everyone's taken a look or that a lot of this is based on conversations we've had. I think it walks through some of the background projects that we've had in town and how that savings. And I think that's where it began, is I remember when we did the LED streetlight conversion. That was a huge savings, and that's when we started talking about this is real money now, and how do we kind of reinvest that, right? So I guess I'll leave it up to you guys if you have any thoughts or comments or concerns.
I thank you guys for all your work on this.
You what?
I thank you guys for all your work on this. This is something we couldn't pull together without staff.
Yeah, Jamie did an excellent job. This is just like,
Mhm.
I was like, I'd give you money.
Yeah. Like I said, I think that this will be well received. Again, it'll totally depend upon the reorganization of the council and whether or not there's any institutional knowledge carrying through from who's currently on the committee or who I can reach out to and talk to. I'm more than happy to kind of facilitate and serve as liaison, even for just the memo for whoever's gonna be on the receiving end of this. I can make a point to go to the finance committee meeting when this gets presented.
Thank you.
Just to give it,
And I
some
think that is a good
background.
point, is even having this, committee members kind of present, be able to
Yeah.
respond and answer questions right away. I
Yeah.
think might be helpful as well, and showing this, that, you guys have been talking about this for quite some time. And to be able to put some detail behind it, I think would be important to hear from probably you guys as well.
Mhm. Well, I think the funding stream here seems pretty significant in terms of for the last, 6 years, there's been a surplus from the electrical permitting, the collection of those fees. And while our sustainability or energy plan says we take it from the project savings, this is a good solution. And I think it keeps the books easier to manage from the town's aspect, in that now we don't have to divert savings from the project through some other internal department where that savings exists and is now rooted into just taking it from the surplus on the electrical side. I think it makes a lot of sense and a lot easier to manage. So I think that's a great idea.
Do we need to approve this or anything?
I guess, yeah, if you guys don't have any edits, I guess that's where it'd start from, or any changes that you see need to be made with this, and then if not, then
I think
yeah, it would be helpful that we could have consensus to move forward and finalize this.
I'm ready to move forward.
Yeah, we've been on this for years and years and years and years.
Do you want this to be formal motion and?
I think we probably should.
I would like to move that we move this forward.
All right. Deb has put a motion on the table. Is there a second? And we have a second. Any discussion?
10 years is a long time.
Well, it's been well over
It's
10
been more
years.
than 10, at least a decade, yeah.
We actually had some sort of funding stream projected in our first energy plan,
Right, I don't have my computer, so I don't have the minutes.
but this is really nice to see it moving. No further discussion, roll call vote, or do you want to see hands?
Hands are fine.
In favor. Lydia, we're voting, okay. We got her endorsement as well, so it's unanimous.
Yeah.
Thank you for, I wish Jamie was here, but I'm on record as saying, thank you, Jamie, for putting all of this together, and thank you to the committee that did some of these projects, or most of these projects came through this committee in order to make to make a strong case that we'd like to have a funding stream. And I can tell you in the state's budget, there is more funding for the climate action plan and through the resilience grants that we at Scarborough can compete in. So we now have a way in which we can put a little bit of our skin in the game when we go and apply for grants. So well done. Great. Wow. This is starting to be a very easy agenda. I didn't expect.
Got an easy one.
Moving right along, I guess we're gonna debrief from the fantastic summer day we had in October, on October 1st. To be repeated again this weekend, I hear, or maybe on a Saturday. But we had the Sustainability Day on October 1st. And sure, if you didn't, there was a couple of nice articles in the press and the town newsletter. I thought the day was really well organized and a very good use of an afternoon in networking with folks and having the town folks come out and see what all is going on, not only from our little purview, but from the wider audience. It was great to see Scarborough businesses there. Deb, you were there all day. Your take?
I think it did go very well, and we've had a follow-up meeting of the planning team. And made a list of all the things we might do a little bit differently, but really for a first attempt, for a first time out the gate. Gosh, I wish Jamie was here so she could hear us praise her up and down. Hopefully she'll watch this. Because she pulled that together in a way that several of the vendors commented that, wait, this is the first time? Like, really, it doesn't seem like a catastrophe. So yeah, that was very well received. Limited interest in presentations, which makes some sense. And so we talked about ways to just help with flow, to get people to those spaces and to shrink that space down so it doesn't feel so cavernous. It's hard to walk in, and I saw a couple of people walk in and look and walk back out again, like, no, I'm not gonna be like one person in this giant room. So that was a little bit awkward, but I think it went very, very well, and I'm loving this list.
That was from our
Our
2 cent,
table,
2
yeah.
cents. Yeah.
Yeah,
And that was really well done. I think there were a lot of people that wanted to weigh in.
Yeah,
But yeah, this is the first time I'm really paying attention to these
well, and so
numbers.
there's that composting stone around my neck again. Um,
Where is that stone?
around my neck.
No, no.
Under
Compost.
under waste management,
The-
it's,
the-
it's
put
number
right there,
2
I'll
and
say.
3, and then again at 5.
Oh.
on the list that people are all, several people are talking
Yeah.
about the composting situation. And so I would like to put that on our agenda for a future meeting to sort of revisit that and talk about how we might move that forward. Um, I don't want to spend today's, I have a lot of things I could say, but that's today is probably not the day. I'll try to resist. And it's interesting on the used clothing and shoes, because that I think exists. Places to drop off used clothing and shoes. There are a variety of organizations that do that work, and then certainly,
Yeah, downtown, there's Main Needs, which is a very
Right.
fine organization.
and so that rather than reinventing the wheel, it might be something that we can provide better information and access to. We might need a local drop-off site to move things to some of these sites that are in Portland, but I bet we could put that together.
I think just highlighting some of those places, because if it's a local effort, then it has to be transported.
Yeah.
You know,
What, isn't there an issue with fabric in particular that is not suitable for clothing, but is not suitable for recycling?
Yes, fabric is a disaster of a waste stream.
So should that be a component of the discussion beyond collecting used clothing?
Well, I mean, it might be reasonable, or it certainly could be reasonable to get somebody from Eco Maine in here. We've done those sessions a couple of times historically. And to talk about some of these gaps and if there are ways we can work on filling these gaps, and without Mike in
Public
public works, we don't have the strong direct tie to the board that we used to. But it may be worth following up on some of those. I mean, the one I always think of right now is election signs. And having a more organized, like, they can't just take them in their regular stream, but it sounds like we could probably figure out a way for them to take them if we were to better organize this. But I always think of this in late October for reasons that may be obvious. And they're not able to make a plan to deal with it in late October. So are somebody putting, oh, Jamie, I'll go through this and make notes. So putting on our agenda, having those conversations in a more orderly way about a couple of these waste streams that are on the list, and also the election signs. You could do. Where is South Portland getting the money for the rebates that they're using for electric tools and things?
I know they went and got grant money, but I don't know for which specific use. They use the governor's resilience
No.
community grants. But if that, I don't know.
Because that's getting a lot of stickers on the list. That feels more daunting to me. Because offering grants means having a lot of money, and we just talked about a few $1,000s, but I'm not gonna get us
Right.
very far.
Yeah,
But it's probably worth following up with South Portland and seeing how that was pulled together. Tool lending program feels more like a job for the library than us, but we could work with them to talk about. I mean, the library did lending of those plug-in electricity.
yeah, the electric
monitors for a
meter
while.
monitors, the
Yeah,
electric monitors.
I'd like to add, one of these, the big one under energy offer grants for home upgrades. So while we might not have money for grants, we are undertaking our impact fee for
yeah.
residential homes. And some of that discussion was thinking, well, this fee might end up being really high. Is there any opportunity to reduce it for affordability and whatnot? And this might be a nice segue to give a certain percentage off if you met some sort of energy criteria. Just something to think about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good idea.
That we can do with money that we have, because we don't
That we don't
have to
take.
give
if
back,
they do
right?
that,
Exactly, exactly.
Do this and you don't have to pay that part,
Mhm.
this. and you don't
Could
pay that
be.
part. Okay, and then we have on our list, and we haven't really moved forward on that, but, well, down at the bottom, municipal operations, municipal solar array. Additional solar on town buildings, that's been sort of on our back burner for a while. And I think the windmill could be tied into that as well. There had been a conversation, gosh, this was probably a decade ago as well, about, gosh, I'm forgetting which land it was. That felt like it might be in a windy spot, but I don't think anybody ever did an assessment of that.
I remember years ago, there was some anemometers that were put around. I don't know if Scarborough. I think we actually tried where the old water tower
Well,
was
that was
years ago.
Ian wanted to convert
Yeah.
the water tower.
Yeah,
Into one.
and so we did a study there and I don't think there was enough.
Yeah, there was not
Wind
enough wind
there.
there, that was, yeah. But I think as a task for us, this sort of bulk task of. Building out a municipal solar array, additional rooftop where that's appropriate. Some sort of question about a windmill site. I mean, Saco had that terrible experience with one that sort of soured southern Maine on.
Yeah, by the train station there.
Theirs was also put in sort of a weird spot. I'd never thought of that as a very windy spot. I spent a lot of time there.
So the Saco one.
The Saco train station.
Yeah, that's what I kind of lived through that, so I have a little bit of
Hmm.
hesitancy towards the
Yeah.
windmill. However, I will say, Saco's water resource department, the treatment plant down by the water has done the small
Mhm.
wind turbines, and their plant is one of the most efficient, probably in New England. They are going kind of trying to go kind of off the grid. It's actually really impressive, and they love to do tours. So that's another.
Oh, let's tour that.
We're not part of like the sewer system kind of thing. And
Yeah.
Scarborough is a little bit different entity, but it is an opportunity to look at our municipal buildings, maybe being able to be kind of more self-sufficient, you know what I mean? So it's just, they have been extremely successful with the smaller ones.
Excellent.
I'm sorry, don't you think, rather than thinking about windmills, putting solar on town buildings is a lot easier and it's sort of lower hanging
Yes,
fruit?
yes, but I was sort of bulking that as a, like, energy generation, energy production within the town, whether that's for. Municipal buildings or for a community solar farm that people could buy into, or whatever those pieces might be. Gosh, we've been talking about that capped off landfill for another, that probably approaches the same decade. And so getting onto our agenda, having some real conversations about how to move those projects forward, I think will be critical. In the transportation block, I feel like most of that belongs to the transportation committee rather than to us, but if there are things that we could do to help facilitate. I mean, the chargers, I think, is happening in the background. I don't really feel like there's an additional task to do in terms of.
I
the
know one
chargers.
of the things, transportation committee, when, I know the chair and I helped kind of formulate what to put on this 2 cents
Yeah.
thing. And one of the things, that I would say Jen Ladd, the chair, talked about was expecting more, people to respond to, like, reducing vehicle miles traveled. That's really a kind of a push, and thinking that we'd have more of that conversation with the sustainability committee. I was surprised it wasn't necessarily on there, but I guess it's in the background. When you talk about bus service and trains and bike and ped, it's all reduced vehicle miles traveled. So they're all kind of in one, I would say, one bucket. And so, that is, yeah, something that they're trying to focus on.
And so you had that map to look at, like, where the gaps were in bicycle transport. So that's in process. And we can leave that transportation commission, maybe wherever they are. Is that the committee then that would work on, like, grant money for EV chargers at maybe the beaches and things?
It's not on their radar or mission at this
Would
point.
that be us then instead?
So at this point,
Okay.
if it's nobody.
Yeah, I think that, and I think there's some future rounds that may come out for Scarborough to, put an application in and try and go after some of this grant money.
Because we did have a couple more spots that.
Yeah, I think our beaches are
Our
one and,
beaches, and then I think it's time to look at school parking lots as well, particularly in staff sections. I'm less worked up about students, but I think as an employer, given the work that we're doing on charter ordinance, that it's time to start looking at staff parking in school lots.
Yeah, like I said, I think transportation isn't necessarily looking at getting everyone to convert to electric. They're looking at getting even everybody off the road, right?
Yeah.
So it's not
Sure.
even putting them in an electric vehicle, it's still about not traveling down the roads. How do you reduce that number of lane miles that you're
Is
traveling?
transportation in a good conversation with the bus crowd yet?
Scarborough has had stops and starts when it
Mhm.
comes to transit discussion, and I know our former assistant town manager was kind of the liaison to the transit community, and that their boards kind of fell off. But I think we've assigned a new staff member to start attending those. That's
Right.
Eric.
That's Eric.
And that's really a bigger question than us. That's a regional question.
Yeah,
And so getting
agreed.
plugged into that regional conversation would be a critical one. Because back when I was riding buses, the Portland bus system and the South Portland bus system and the Bedford Saco bus system were duplicating paths through here
Mhm.
in ways that weren't particularly useful. And we sat kind of in the middle of that, but we weren't in a position to join the conversation. Believe me, I tried.
And then there's more conversations around like microtransit and certain bigger facilities that are looking at shuttling and different things like that, and how you incorporate it into the community. So there's starting more discussions around other,
Okay,
maybe not less traditional, you get on a bus and you head apparently to the mall, which nobody wants to go to the mall, and then you have to transfer to get into Portland, you know what I mean? So
right.
there is definitely some conversations around that. So,
Okay, but that again, it's not us, that's
That-
transportation.
yeah,
committee,
yeah,
Okay,
agreed.
but somebody's doing. Okay,
Transportation to beaches would be good.
Yeah.
Because in the summer, when I was going with my grandchildren, sometimes you couldn't get in.
Yeah, we've talked about that a bunch of times, just how nice it would be to have a hub somewhere where we could park and take the
the school
shuttle.
parking lots are very underutilized when the beaches
During
are.
the summer, they sure are.
Yeah.
And the school buses are underutilized in the summer, so.
and it's amazing how many people ride the service from Bailey's Campground to the beaches, just from one campground.
Yep.
Right,
It just seems like, yeah, parking up here.
so that feels like a task for transportation as well, or
Mhm.
community
There
services.
is, yeah, I believe
Um,
there's been conversation about utilizing the high school parking lot, and we did have.
I don't want us to reinvent the wheel and duplicate work, but
From the public, I don't know if we would take that at the end, or. I think it's. What we're talking about.
the residents of Becker Shores would like to see a bus loop that goes down to Spurwink and back to town. Down to Spurwink. For employees.
And I think that's part of the conversation Becker Shores is having with the town, trying to find, really through their, through their system, because they do have different shuttles, and utilizing kind of theirs in a better way, as well as maybe incorporating that more into the community, which I think would be really good to kind of collaborate and kind of for one goal, right, is to kind of get everybody moving around in kind of shuttles or buses or, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and in terms of talking about shuttles, that's, I think, where you would get into conversations with the other major employers in town.
Mhm.
Like
Right, that's exactly what. the
Hannaford, like I
conversation
see
is starting.
Hannaford employees using the buses that exist.
Mhm.
but actively engaging those communities, Hanford, Walmart, Cabela's, some of those other major.
Yeah, we got
Amen.
big
Sorry.
IDEX
Amen.
going in and innovation district.
And the bus crowd used to pull into the Main Med parking lot, but then Main Med got kind of weird about that. That may be a role for the town to engage some of the conversations with the employers from a, no, really, this is something that we
Well,
should be
there is a
doing.
bus stop there. Is you're saying that they can't go in?
There was a
That's
time
different
when
than-
Main Med asked them not to. I think that must have been resolved.
Oh, okay.
But the history of the bus crowd with the employers and with the businesses has been very antagonistic.
Hmm.
That they don't want they haven't wanted bus stops and they haven't wanted the bus at their place and they don't want people parking at their place because of the bus and they don't want and so that's a place where the town council could have a resolution requesting this kind of, there are ways for the town to say, no, really, guys, this is a good thing that we should be doing collectively. But
And
again,
I think you have
that
brought
was-
that up in the past that I've passed along to transportation, because that is a concept you don't really think about, is that you drive to a bus stop and get on a bus and go is not necessarily something that everybody thinks about, like to your point is, can you park here or there? And so I think that was a good point that you had brought up. I think that was probably a few years ago, we had talked about it with transportation as well, and when we get into transit, it's not really. I guess I would automatically think people are walking or biking or something to a bus.
Well,
stop,
and
but not
transit-
necessarily.
Transit has thought that as well. I did
Right,
surveys
that's what I mean.
through transit.
Yeah.
About this very issue, and it would be like, so how did you get to the bus stop today?
Right, right,
And drove here in my car was not one of the tick boxes that I could
Right.
choose.
right.
So.
Yeah, I guess that was the point. Is how frequent is that you see? I mean, are people doing that?
Well, I think that they're not, because the system is not set up for that. And we're not advertising that as an option. We're not telling people that that was an option.
But
I
I guess
mean-
if you're already in your car and you're heading somewhere. would
Right,
you
but
stop
if
at
you're
the-
headed into Portland. And you could
And
instead
you could
park at
park.
Hannaford.
Yeah, that's.
And
true.
ride a bus to Portland.
Yeah.
I've talked to several people who are like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. The schedules are a little wonky and it doesn't always work out for
Right.
people. But we are not, as Americans, inclined to think in that way.
Yeah.
And so I was using it because my commute was long and I could use that time to grade papers and prep lectures if I was in the bus. And if I was driving my car, I couldn't do that. So there's a mind shift that utilizing public transportation can provide services for those of us who have cars. But if the transit system is not prepared to interact with that, and if the community is not prepared to let you leave your car somewhere,
Mhm.
and if, then it becomes very, very tricky.
Yeah, I think it is nice, too, like, I know South Portland has a hub. Seems like this kind of thing that you at least have kind of a place you can wait for the bus, but also you can park and it's right in the kind of the center of kind of the little downtown, things like that. I think it'd be.
That's the
Maybe
same
think-
principle.
When we talk about the downs and talk about, I mean, is that a place for a hub? You know what I mean? And you talk about kind of thinking bigger picture, right? And to your point, and then you have a location to actually get to and then can disperse in many directions kind of thing, but.
What about a commuter car share parking lot? We don't have one of those in Scarborough, do we?
Well, we got that park and ride by the turnpike
And that's,
entrance.
yeah, we have, and that's utilized quite often. I know, the Saco one is usually full and so is the Biddeford one. So
But yet the one in
Regionally, they're
Yarmouth
using
is
it.
hardly ever used.
it's huge.
And
That's
it's
true.
huge, but it's never used.
That is true.
So then, and there's one right on 295 in Yarmouth where the travel
Yes.
tourism building is.
Mhm.
That one gets used a lot. A lot of truckers use that one to,
Well, and that's used
Sleep
for
it
the
off.
For the ferry.
The ferry, that one's used, the
Yeah.
ferry runs a shuttle from that parking
Yeah.
lot down to the ferry terminal, out to Pleasant Island and stuff.
I think mostly people use the Hannaford parking lot.
Here,
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I
Yeah.
settled on eventually.
I used it yesterday.
Um,
Yeah,
Okay,
like I said, there is
so-
one at exit 42. in our open house for the transportation study we had 2 weeks ago, I guess now, one of the comments a resident had was maybe looking for another one, more of on the south side of town, like Route 1 towards Dunstan or towards the Saco end. And I know just across the line, Saco is now, developing that part north, so there's kind of this cluster of kind of density that might be able to support something like that. I'm not sure, but really Cabela's isn't that far either, so that's where, I don't know, trying to figure out what would people utilize.
So Angela, it may make sense for me to sit down with transportation at some point, just because this has been an obsession of mine for a long time.
Well, I will say, I think it would be, actually, timing is good, that if this group wants to provide even some kind of bullet in a memo or email, we are taking resident comments around transportation in general, because we're trying to come up with our townwide master plan for transportation. And so this is perfect for that, and kind of leading into is really putting it in this document, like what is our path forward and the bigger picture for transportation in town.
Okay,
So I think timing wise, it might make sense for try to put your thoughts around that and actually put that in writing. That could help inform the
Okay.
study, I think. would
and
be
do I
super
send
helpful.
that to you or?
Yeah,
to-
yeah.
Okay,
Yep.
I'll try to put that on my.
And if anybody else, yeah. I mean, we're getting everything from, I wait too long at this light to traffic calming
Sandy's
to
not
what are you doing about EV chargers, right? So we got, it's good. We want to hear all the feedback, so it's all incorporated kind of in this master document, so we can kind of see where do we need to go next, right? What's our next steps? So I think that's helpful.
And that plays in part with the new corridor discussion that I know the town is involved with, the Gorham connector
Yes.
kind of thing. I mean, I just noticed all these developments that are going on outside of Scarborough proper.
Yeah.
And that's bringing traffic into our network.
Yeah.
And that's, we really don't, these other developers doing these in Buxton, for example, and things like that, the impacts are here.
Mhm.
And we don't get an advantage of any of those kind of impact fees that are normally paid by the developers that are developing here in Scarborough. And that's really pushing our infrastructure to a point.
Yeah.
where-
And that's a good point with the east-west connector, talking about that. Part of that whole proposal would actually have a bus service or shuttle and having those parking rides on either end. So we're trying to eliminate the vehicle miles traveled even on a connector road like that. So I think that's helpful.
I was just wondering, as this morning, as I was sitting in traffic coming into this complex here, all of the kids driving to school, and of course, the other places, parents driving children to school. Is there any way of incentivizing people to kind of not do that?
I will say we do have some members on the transportation committee that's their biggest
I mean,
pet
there was
peeve.
some, there was
I
some,
will say that's their mission, is to try to figure out how do you get kids on a school bus.
yeah, and if in fact, this new school comes off for the tiny little
Yeah.
children, there's gonna be a lot of parents that are gonna wanna drive Biff and Buffy to school, so.
Well,
Agreed.
I think there's certainly, and I'm glad somebody's working on this, but there are ways to incentivize that within the school community. To give the kids prizes for the
Yeah.
numbers of times they rode the bus and stuff like that.
This came up, so we had a building committee Q&A last night, and one of the residents had some questions about bus ride times and things like that to the new school. And it's really interesting to talk about because one, COVID changed everybody's behavior around busing. And so we're just now kind of seeing a normal kind of a return to ridership. Because lots of parents didn't put their children on the school buses.
Well,
for-
the school asked us not.
Well,
to.
that happened too. That happened too.
Asked us not to, and then clawing that back
Yes.
from our children has been enormous.
Very, very hard, yes.
Enormously difficult.
And then, so we were all kind of just talking anecdotally, but, for my family, it's really funny to think about because I have a kiddo at Blue Point one at Wentworth and two at the middle school. One of my middle schoolers is in sixth grade. And so the consolidated school plan brings the sixth grade to Wentworth. So they would be on that K-5 schedule now. So I would have all three kids for the first time, I would have all three kids on the same bus schedule with being at the same bus stop. Going to my bus stop and knowing all my kids are getting on the same bus and I only have to wait for one bus, because right now it's three buses for Blue Point, Wentworth,
Wow.
and the middle school. Putting all my kids on the same bus and being like, see ya.
Now,
That incentivizes not driving my kids to school.
that's next. My kids would sort of go back and forth between being on and off the same bus. And when they're not on the same bus, I only have to focus on one getting out the door on time, and then the next one.
Yes. Yeah, so it was funny, like anecdotally, to talk about how we envision ridership changing if the school passes, because there are gonna be some people who aren't gonna want their youngest going on a bus all the way from Spurwink to the new school.
Or
But-
with sixth graders. say
Exactly, or
kindergarten.
riding a bus with sixth graders. But then for other parents, those of us who live out in West Scarborough, who have been accustomed to having three bus stops and three times and whatever, there might be a real mind shift out that way. That's where we all say, okay, great, like one bus, like that's amazing. So there are things that the school department, I think that would be a good focus to bring ridership back up. The other thing is, we've had a terrible shortage of bus drivers. I just saw Sarah Redmond, who's the transportation director, driving bus 12 this morning on my way here, which means they were down a driver. Yeah, because Sarah was driving my kiddo's bus. So, that's the other thing is, we need to
Yeah,
be able
adding
to
more bus
provide,
runs.
we need to be able to provide those services consistently. And if we don't have the staff to do that, then we can't really incentivize more ridership. So it's
And kids driving to school, I mean, if you play a
the older
sport,
kids,
you
there's no
don't get-
late bus.
you don't have, and there's no, when I grew up, we had a sports bus.
Yep.
Yeah.
And you rode that to get home, but now there is none,
Yeah,
and so the
when I
kids
was on
have
the
to
school
drive.
board, when I was on the school board, I had the late bus conversation with everybody who would listen to me. Cause I just think for our community, oh my gosh, how much benefit people would have from a late bus. We just can't, it's
But-
not in the budget.
Not in the
But
budget, and
then-
we don't have the
Yeah, I
staff.
guess that's the next question is oh no.
Now we're on to the updates and we're a little bit early, but April, town council updates?
Aside from ordinance having met, and like I said, we'll,
And
you
we're in
know,
the
the
middle of
topic
election
will,
season.
right, the topic will need to come back up again. Committees will be reorganizing. I'll put in my bid, as I always do, to stay as the sustainability liaison. You know, it's, all of our committees sometimes get tossed in the air, so hopefully I will still be here. And yeah, elections is November 7th, so please
Right
don't
now.
forget to go vote.
All right, and planning board, Autumn, do you want to?
Oh,
Bring
sure.
up
We
anything?
have the 12 EV chargers going in at the Fairfield Inn. Those came before the planning board last month. Other things that are exciting, let's see, Costco's grand opening is on the 17th. The Downs is having a ribbon cutting today for the market center, the mixed use town center. And we have several other site plans and small residential developments going on through town that are coming before.
Yeah,
the
Morrison Centers,
Morrison Center
Or
expansion.
and then there's housing lots going on Highland Ave there. Along track, they call it trackside, I think.
Railroad tracks and.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
anyway, that's where we are. The lighting ordinance
That-
is
yeah.
adopted, so that's exciting. That is on the
yeah, no
website.
more questions, there were no more,
No
the
more.
expectations now are there.
Yeah,
Developers have to meet it.
so section 8, chapter 405.
Well,
There you go.
I guess generally speaking, the work that staff is doing, and the committee should know that they're working really hard on looking at all the ordinances per the comprehensive plan and everything. And you've been pumping those out left and right.
Landscaping is the next one that'll hopefully get finished up. We reduced the design standards by 20 pages, so.
Taking a lot of lighting out of that.
90 pages is now down to 70, so that was exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we're consolidating, because right now we have it in 2 different places and so anyway.
So one thing that this conversation just sparked is the council will be meeting to discuss how we did on our 2023 goals as we set our 2024 goals. And one of our 2023 goals was to engage committees to make changes to ordinances and things like that. And so one thing that would maybe be super helpful between now and December is if this committee kind of generated a short list, you know, a cheat sheet that I could that I
that you
can
could-
highlight and say, you know, these are all the things and touches that,
It must be the owl then. Can you not hear us?
We need to wrap this up.
Yeah, we gotta get out of here. Technology is not kind to us today. Yeah, I think we could do something like that.
right, just to have, I mean, and I could probably.
Can you guys hear me? Yeah, I can't hear you guys at all.
Not saying anything useful. Yeah, you're probably not missing much.
Somebody replied to her in the chat.
I am.
Yeah,
I've been talking to her.
but yeah, we can definitely do that, and I think.
Like a brag list.
Yeah.
I mean, you guys did, you guys brought a lot of stuff to the council this year. Between resolutions and ordinance
Or the EV
changes.
ordinance was big,
Yeah.
we did the utility grade solar
Turn it off.
ordinance, now the lighting's been done. Yeah,
That'll make us feel better. So,
Yeah, great.
okay.
all right, anything from, usually Jamie has
Yeah.
input from the Conservation Commission and
Yeah,
Transportation.
We were both at the last, Autumn and I both were at the last Conservation Commission meeting. Again, looking at ordinance changes, we put in front of them some thoughts around really protection of our natural resources as far as wetland setbacks, or stream protection setbacks, things like that. So struggling a little bit, trying to get momentum just because there's a lot, once you start dabbling in a little thing, and I guess that's where staff is trying to get them maybe to focus on a little piece at a time, and I know it's frustrating. I know this group has dealt with that before too. It's hard to, once you're like, well, yeah, but I want to do all of this. And then it bogs it down, so things don't go as quickly, obviously, right? So trying to encourage them to like, let's pick this or that, because every day development comes through the planning office. And we're seeing it and saying, oh, if we had just got this wetland buffer adjusted, or that it would really make a big impact. And so I think we need to try to focus on, like I said, little baby steps, which I know is very frustrating when you're very passionate about, no, we gotta protect everything. And in the meantime, nothing's protected. So I think that's kind of the voice that staff is having and is trying to get at the little things to get us momentum to get started. And I think council has been very supportive in the past year or two on environmental issues. And so I think this is the time to kind of move some of these things forward. And so there is a lot of momentum behind it. We just need to kind of hone in on trying to get things moving. And then in addition to that, we do have a deadline on a low impact development ordinance, which will impact a lot of kind of what developers can and can't do. And it's really around protecting the environment, and it's really geared towards stormwater management. So because of our federal stormwater permit, we're required to have that in place by July 1st, which, as you guys also know, is not a long time when you're dealing with ordinance changes. So that's going to be a challenge to kind of move through, and Conservation Commission will be part of that conversation as well.
And then the RFQ for the vulnerability assessment is going to be released at the beginning of November. And then following that will be the open space RFQ or RFP. We have a lot going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yay, thanks, guys.
All right. That's the agenda, folks. We do have a conflict with our meeting next month. It falls, the fourth Thursday falls during the week of vacation, I believe. And
So Thanksgiving Day.
It's Thanksgiving Day.
Thanksgiving Day. And in the past, we have usually taken the November and December meeting and kind of pushed it to like the second week of December.
Yeah,
And,
Is that-
and we may, depending on what ordinance does or anything, on that side, I would move that we might consider canceling our November meeting and make a November, December meeting to the second Thursday or Wednesday of December. Throw that out.
13?
It's not a Friday, so 13th is not a bad day.
Friday the 13th is not a bad day either. Can put that out there.
Yeah.
My college buddies are having a party. They've been doing that for.
What do you think's the next one, Nigel?
Okay, so
December 13th.
everybody want to lock and load that as the date, and I know Jamie and I have already talked about some agenda items for that meeting, but she'll now push it out and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
We have time. Could I put a couple, go down the rabbit hole questions out?
We have time.
Just in the preliminary stage for the new school, the parking lot is gigantic. According to the picture I saw in the newspaper. Is there concern over if you build it, they will come, or I don't know how to interpret that for a elementary level school. It's not that kids are gonna drive to school.
I think there's some, well,
There must be I'm just.
yeah, there must be some calculation that is done on public schools and how many parking spots you need. And based on the grade level, I mean, none of these kids will be driving.
Sure. But I mean, at the previous schools, parents have not been able to park to be there for volunteer shifts and things, because there just hasn't been enough parking. And so
Yeah.
presumably somebody's done that math, but I think raising the question, did y'all do that math right?
Yeah.
Is a
So there was, I don't know exactly what the, calculations are to determine the number of parking spaces, but it's gonna be 3 full grade levels worth of teachers, administration, plus visitor parking 4 grades, sorry, kindergarten, first, second, third, thank you. And so it is a lot of staff, especially at that grade level. And then you take into consideration ed techs and special ed and, you know, all of the support staff that come in. So it is quite a bit of staff for parking. And then also, I think the parking lot picture, I don't know specifically if you're just looking at the delineated spaces, but there's also 2 bus loops.
Yep.
Which makes, you know, gives it a huge footprint. But we have gotten so much feedback from the community that having a single bus loop for that number of kids and having to sit in that kind of drop off lane. So we've specifically designed it so that we have 2 designated drop off
Drop-offs.
areas, which obviously increases.
I wasn't being critical.
Oh,
was
no,
just looking for the-
I
for
wanna
the
answer your
background
question,
on it. So anybody asks.
Has there been any public comment about, you know, a prospective parking garage being developed? That's always been something I've heard in the planning board side, you know, this whole idea of parking in downtown district of the Downs. You know, I take Portland High School for an example. They have a parking garage right next to the school, and the school has, you know, a way in which teachers don't have to pay to park.
Sure.
Because, you know, and I think it's because the city runs that parking. You know, is that something that might be on the table for the Downs? I don't know if it's a funding stream, so to speak, but municipal parking is not a novel concept. Lewiston has it. There's, you know, maybe a way to reduce that impervious surface by building up instead of out.
As it relates to the Downs, you know, the school certainly obviously planned on a standard, you know, traditional parking lot. My conversations with the Downs, Dan Bacon, a couple of times has been asked about a parking garage or a
Because it
parking
comes
garage.
up a lot at
which-
planning
It
board.
comes up at the
Comes up a-
planning board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And my take on that is that the Downs has always kind of been resistant to the idea that they're gonna need a parking garage or.
I
that they
don't
would
think
have
they're
it.
gonna have the critical mass that
Yeah.
would require a
That's the
parking
answer
lot
we get.
based on the.
Well, it's
Sure.
significantly more expensive parking to build, and so the developer absolutely will resist that. But if
Well,
we as
yeah.
a community feel like that's a critical part of the infrastructure for that property, then
But to be fair, you have to look at the percentage of retail and commercial to residential, and you have to make those numbers match. So you're not having an empty parking garage, right? So and right now we have.
Yeah, but I guess from my standpoint, you know, with the school going potentially in there. You know, what's the master plan look like now for the Downs? I mean, what's the vision there anymore? It just seems like I've lost. You know, some sort of continuity about what the master plan said way back when. And, you know, things change, and this might be a change that has to happen in order to make. I'm concerned about the amount of impervious surface going in.
Right, and so I think that's where the question is how much parking lot is there? Not how full or empty a garage would be, but if there are enough parking spots that they can be built into a garage. I mean, there's a minimum.
Well, the
number of
Downs
parking
is always trying to, they have in the CPD district to get credit for on-street parking, and that is a struggle when they go through their site plan process. So,
Yeah.
I mean, they have some built-in ways to reduce parking and to look at it, but we do have some ordinances that conflict that, so. Parking is something that's coming up next year to take a look at.
That's gonna be,
Committee and the long range planning. It's on the list behind landscaping and architecture and site layout, but it's up there. Because it's a big question. There's a movement across the country to reduce parking overall, and then we have a different demographic that lives in Scarborough as well that needs more parking, right? So there's some conflicting some needs. So it comes up a lot of planning boards.
And I guess going back to the school comments, I guess town staff hasn't seen like design plans, and I don't even think they're there yet. I assume they're just at kind of sketch preliminary, and that
Which is all
we would be able to have the
mathematical.
opportunity to
Very
make comments
stuff.
on, like you said, reducing impervious, or looking at stormwater, or looking at landscaping, or looking at how you break up that pavement and things like that. I assume that is coming.
And there's also the point that was already brought up about EV parking for staff.
They would,
They'll
and
have
that's the
to-
thing is the ordinance,
Yeah.
I don't know, they are municipal use, so I don't know how that works with planning board, doesn't necessarily have to give it. An
Approval.
approval, it's
Advisory.
an advisory
Advisory,
opinion.
yeah, because it's municipal.
But they should at least put the conduit under the parking lot.
Well-
And then ask everybody else to.
As long as I'm on the planning board, that any parking lot will have that. Now I could give,
And should we put on maybe our discussions for the future? What? Maybe I just don't know what the impediments are to the cap landfill solar array. South Portland has, one,
yeah,
and why? When would be a good time for us to pursue that?
Which side are you talking about?
Just on the list from the sustainability day,
Mhm.
it said municipal solar array,
yeah,
Right,
and I
but
just
which
don't,
landfill side are you talking?
I don't know. I mean,
Oh,
we have one going on, well, it's probably done now, is that,
yeah,
is that online?
I don't know if it's online or not.
Because
one
the
out by
school's getting the
Westbrook.
benefit
Yeah.
on the electric rate because of that landfill
Mhm.
array. Which one is that? That's the Eco Main?
There's one, that's, the access is in Westbrook, but the site is actually in Scarborough.
Scarborough, yeah.
And then there's another one, like you were saying, there's one by Ecobane, there's another one on Farms, but as far as the landfill cap goes, I think it's that one that you're talking about. But that one's going on. That's why I was curious if there's another site that you
Oh,
guys
yeah.
are interested in.
I misdirected it toward the cap landfill discussion. I was just picking up on the sustainability day comment about
Yeah.
the popularity of
Yeah,
a municipal solar.
yeah,
I
like
think
three,
it's just
four.
not made it to the top of our list of things to take action on,
Right.
and that's what I'm asking, is that we move some of those items, and that would be one of them, to the top of our list.
Yeah.
To really dig in and.
Maybe we should look at the map and look where our three-phase service is and where, town-owned land, obviously. Might be helpful.
And think through what solar we still need or could utilize on municipal buildings.
Mhm.
And whether there's space there for one that would have subscription options for community members.
I always look at the public safety building and say, it's a shame we don't have solar panels. I've said that
Had
for,
that
I don't know how many
conversation
years now.
It's true.
It's such
But
a
again-
beautiful, beautiful spot for solar panels.
That's on the list, is
No,
doing that next
absolutely.
round of evaluation of municipal structures. Because those two that we did were supposed to be a pilot.
Maybe we could go after another grant opportunity coming up. I hear there's one coming later or early this. Late winter, early spring. Another round from the governor's community resilience. And maybe we can apply for something like that and put something on that.
Well, I guess I'm also wondering about getting ahead to your point, like, I know Rick was part of the building committee for there, and we talked through trying to do things and then some value engineering happened, which I
It
get,
does.
but also it's good to be at the table when and this is why I'm asking about the school. Community center is being talked about, so there's a lot of large projects that are coming up in town that really to get at the table, to talk about these sustainable practices as you're designing it is a lot easier too. And trying to make that case and educating people on, I know Deb, you're always talking about that, is talking about putting in when they're building something rather than kind of retrofitting. And maybe there needs to be some education around that for these groups and these building committees that are
And-
being formed.
Even if all that gets put in at the building time is the
Yeah.
wires.
Yeah,
Even if all you put through is the wires, even if you are not able to manage.
Yeah.
The actual solar panels in the context of the building project and still get it passed. If the wires are there, we can come back and do it later, and it's not hard.
I think that's important to get that word out, because like you said, as building committees are looking at, and I'm not picking on school, because community services is right there also, and just start talking about. To that point, when you start value engineering, there's also some key infrastructure to make sure that that's in place, like the conduit for EV chargers and same thing with like you're talking about with the wiring, that is kind of pennies on the dollar rather than, and actually looking
The
ahead.
actual panels are expensive,
Right,
but
But
the
the
wiring, wire in the wall
Yeah.
is not.
right.
And fortunately, we have codes that are becoming more and more stringent, and those requirements are embedded in code. And it's just a matter of UBEC adopting 20, which they're motivated to now because there's some federal money for code training and compliance from the feds, that if you don't have the 2021 adopted, you're not eligible to apply for. So that's moving me in a little bit faster. Finally, we've been at the game for a while.
The community, the town, what was it, the public service building and whatever that Revision Energy put in those solar panels, and then we bought them out a couple of years
Yep.
ago. Is that opportunity still available with Revision Energy, or is that?
Well, I don't know,
Is that ancient
Revision
history?
Energy per se, it was because of the tax credits that
Yeah,
it enabled Revision to do that
there's a bit of a waiting list because they need to have access to the capital
PPA.
and they need to have the tax.
Because that was really a sweet
Um,
transaction.
But getting on the list, I don't know how the list is.
But then there was something to do with the solar and the federal tax credit that went away. But I think
It came back.
it's come back with the infrastructure.
I think the thing to do
Yeah.
is, there's a lot to dig into on that right now, because some of the ground has shifted a little bit, but getting somebody in to talk us through what the finance.
Yeah, I don't know whether, I was just wondering.
Yep.
Does Revision Energy, would that still be an opportunity for us to still do it? I mean, I don't know what the lay of the land is, because I know if it's tax driven, we can't use the tax credits, but they could.
Right, that's exactly what that mechanism was, and they were doing it internally because the interest rates on that from the outside were incredibly high, and so they had developed an in-house.
But it was a really good transaction
That they
for
were
the
using
town.
specifically for nonprofits and municipalities.
Well, and there's something in the Inflation Reduction Act that allows some sort of nonprofit access to tax credits.
Okay, so let's put it on the.
There's a
agenda,
lot in
and
this
let's really dig
infrastructure.
into it
It
and
would
figure.
For,
be good
inflation
for us to
reduction.
try to get smarter on some of this stuff, but I'm just speaking for myself, it would be good, I would like to be smarter on it.
Okay. That's, Jamie's getting all of this.
Yeah, she'll watch it later, won't she? It's okay.
It's nice to kind of do this blue sky exercise here, because we're lining up work for next year.
Yeah.
It's out there,
Great.
we just don't know.
While we're lining up work for next year, I remind everybody that once upon a time, before we had this other list, we had talked about the Trigen replacement and or reviewing it or figuring out what to do with it. So it was one of the things we had talked about doing. So just
Well, we have a list somewhere.
Yeah, well,
I
it's
don't know
still
what
running.
it is.
I'm glad to see that the Trigen's still going.
I
I mean,
agree.
it's running right now.
Still running. It's still running. It's still there, it hasn't run away yet.
But it's different technology now today. I mean, you have combustion going on there and
How long ago was it that we did Trigen? 10 years?
It's been almost that, yeah.
in a while.
Longer than
I just
Yeah, I think it was.
trying to make a long.
But this committee
I'm dragging
actually
this out. I
did an
just wanted to
ordinance
remind everybody.
revision on those fuel cells, right?
Yes. thank
So
you.
we've done that.
I have a list. I know
Yeah.
all the.
So there's this new
ordinances.
technology using hydrogen
Yeah,
and,
we
you know.
We know.
You know, the unfortunate thing though,
Chicken though.
with some of this is that it's driven by current legislation and what's in place. So if you have a change in administration or a change of a governor or something else like that, it all goes away. So there is a certain amount of,
Right, well,
yeah, so a certain amount of time sensitivity
Mhm.
to much of this.
Always
Just like, you know, rejiggering the town council, you know, we lose our representation there. We start from zero. You know, so it's not like time is not like an unlimited resource.
especially since the temperatures keep going up, they have.
Term limits, not term limit, you know, it's crazy. Anyway, It is now 20 after 9.
I didn't know if you guys, I don't see on your agenda, do you take public comment? We do have members of the public. that-
Well, we certainly are open to the public and we do have 5 minutes or so. We could, if you wanted to open it up.
It's up to you guys. I don't know. if
There were
it's not on your
certainly, there
agenda
were
that you-
public comments coming out on the Q&A, and so that somebody, there's a new message right now, because it was at 3 and now it's at 4.
I guess I was just surprised it's not somewhere on your agenda. Is that not something you
It's
typically
not on our
do?
agenda, we don't usually. have anybody will-
No, but we
There was a-
generally, when somebody comes,
Yeah.
it's totally open.
So it's up to you guys.
Mr.
So,
Funhart.
I move we open it up for public comment. Now, we don't have to respond to anything, but we should hear. Right.
Go ahead.
You're saying there, so
I don't have anyone with their.
Nobody
hands
with their
to
hand up.
speak, no.
Okay, but the Q and A
Okay.
number went from 3 to 4, just a moment. ago.
Yeah.
Oh. You doing it or you want me to? You want me to?
You can.
I think if you unmute, there we go.
David, I
Hi.
think unmute
Hey,
you.
We can hear you.
Rick, if you can hear me.
Yeah.
You and I communicated a few days ago about possibly getting on the agenda at some point with the Sustainability Committee. My name is David Kuhnhart. I'm a resident of Scarborough, have been a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby for 10 and a half years. And we have been getting municipalities signing on to a resolution that asks members of Congress to actually co-sponsor or support the Energy Innovation Act, which has been reintroduced. Fortunately, our member of Congress, Shelley Pingree, was an original co-sponsor twice of it. There was a significant number of members of Congress who supported it in the last Congress, 96, 97 in the House, 49 in the Senate. There is some feeling that it can move forward now that it's been reintroduced, even in the present cacophony in Washington. But the important thing is that in Maine, the Carbon Cashback for Me resolution, which essentially says Congress take up this act and pass it, has been adopted by 28, 29 communities, small and large, rural and urban in Maine. And some of those include Portland, South Portland, Cape Elizabeth, Saco. We would very much like to have Scarborough be an additional signer.
Thanks, David, and I did, and Jamie and I have talked, and we're going to invite his group in after the first of the year for our agenda. It's more, we've had him here a couple of times, but there's new members and thought it would be pertinent to do that because we don't want to bring something to the council until that we haven't fully vetted and we're comfortable with moving to that realm. And so David, thank you for reaching out. I know you have meetings planned before the end of the year, but Scarborough will seek to engage with you and your group and see what direction we can go with you. We want to hit the Q&A there and just double check.
I have, it's been David,
Oh.
he was talking about. the
Oh,
level
okay,
5.
okay, so they were still up there because you haven't actually answered or anything like that.
I've
Is that
answered
right?
some, I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know about the landfill off of Rigby Road, but
Oh,
it's,
is that?
I was looking it up, but I don't know if we own it or not. He was just,
We do
Commenting
own
while you
property
guys are
on
speaking.
Rigby Road,
That may be something you can take offline.
yeah, I was just gonna
Let's
put
take
it
this-
in
Let's
notes.
take this up at our next meeting and let's go home now.
I hear there's a motion to adjourn.